all want to make money by doing something we love. If you could turn your hobby into your job, you'd never work a day in your life, right? Welcome to Hobby Hustle, the ultimate podcast where collecting passion and business collide. Now, here's your host, Zach Nygett.
Welcome to episode 23 of Hobby Hustle. What is going on, everybody? I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm your host, Zach Nygett. Thank you for taking time to spend with us. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. No matter if you're a new listener or been listening for a bit, please be sure to like, subscribe, rate us, and of course, share with your friends. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to leave a comment to share any thoughts or suggestions you have. I greatly appreciate your support, and I hope you enjoy the show. Today's guest has been a lifelong sports fan and collector who is also an accomplished entrepreneur, operator, and tech thought leader. He's taken his passions for sports, collecting, and tech and created some pretty amazing companies. He's the founder of Trove, a content business focused on sports cards and collectibles. Additionally, he's the chief executive officer for Shoebox and CHCK.AI, which are innovative AI-powered solutions designed to revolutionize card grading and appraisals for a variety of collectibles and luxury items. You can find his business Trove on IG at Find Your Trove or Shoebox at Get Shoebox. I'm honored to welcome successful entrepreneur, leader in the tech space, Matt Sposta, to the show. Matt, welcome, my friend. How are you, sir?
Everything's good, man. Happy to be here. Long time coming.
We're happy to have you, man. I know that we've crossed paths before, so it's nice to sit down and have a formal conversation with you. So I know that you're a big sports fan. You're located in New York. Any thoughts on sort of local sports teams and their season so far, or maybe past?
So this has been an exciting year. I'm a diehard Met fan.
Okay.
This has been one of the most exciting Mets teams we've had in a long time. Made a good run. Obviously lost to a juggernaut in the Dodgers, but if we were fortunate enough to get the Yankees, I think we would have won a World Series. But that's being a little hindsighty. But New York sports are obviously their own beast. I'm a Giants fan, but I can't be a Giants fan anymore. It's been really interesting.
I'm a Bears fan, man, so I feel your pain.
Oh man, Bears have been tough. Although this was supposed to be an exciting year for you guys.
Yeah. Right.
But the whole Daniel Jones fiasco, losing Barkley and seeing him thrive in Philly is horrible. I'm also a diehard Nets fan. I'm one of the unique New Yorkers who grew up here and was a Nets fan. We've had a couple of crazy and amazing years. Now we're in this tank mode, but the team is playing way above their potential. And now they want to trade away all their players because we're not tanking well enough. So that's been interesting to watch. But yeah, I mean, sports right now are amazing. NFL has been awesome this year. I'm an avid fantasy player. So for me, it's harder to follow and stay committed to a team like the Giants. And it's just better to just follow my players and watch all the games and
totally.
Just
when your team is not cream of the crop all the time, it's nice to have fantasy, right? It's it's a good escape. You still get involved and you can cheer.
Honestly, that's why it's great to be a Giants fan, because there are never any expectations. And when you don't have expectations, you get 2 Super Bowls and you're like, holy, crap, where did that come from? It's that's the type of thing that happens. But being a fan of the Mets is that's a harder fan base. And that's been a harder history. I was born in '84, so I was only 2 years old when we had our last World Series championship. So no, New York sports is always fun. It's crazy. I love the opportunity to get to go to the games, just have access to all these amazing venues. So yeah,
that's killer, man. That's very cool. Well, condolences on the loss, but like you said, the Mets had a heck of a run, man, and at least you're not the Cubs.
Yeah,
my
I
Cubs
can't be mad at it
every year. So
yeah, sorry about that. And also, if we go out and get Juan Soto, it's going to be a completely, obviously different dynamic in Flushing this year. So
yeah,
excited to see what happens there.
Very cool. Well, hey, with all my guests, I like to sort of take it back to the start. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got into collecting and some of those early memories?
Yeah, I've been an avid sports fan my whole life. My dad grew up a Yankee fan, but we grew up on Long Island, so we used to go to Met games all the time because it was so accessible. My dad had this awesome collection of cards growing up. He had his Mickey Mantles and Jackie Robinsons and stuff like that. So I always had this aspirational collector thing in me. Some of the earliest memories I can remember with my dad and my brother, really hunting the Griffey 89 Upper Deck. That was like the top card back then. You know, we always wanted to get our hands on that. I remember my dad bought a sealed box set of the 89 Upper Deck. Frank Thomas was one of my favorite players back then. So I was always hunting that 90 tops Frank Thomas card. And then, you know, basketball in the 90s just like absolutely consumed me. You know, we all became Jordan fans. We all became Shaq fans. And like, obviously it was during the junk era. But we, you know, like, you know, I go back and look at my collection from back then, and it was just like, we didn't know any better. We were buying all these kind of, you know, shitty base cards and stuff like that. But like, that was the best part about it. We buy these cards and we go in and we trade them with our buddies in class. And, you know, it was just, like that's the nostalgia part. That's what we love.
100%. And it was affordable, right? Like, I mean, I remember going to the corner store and getting a pack for
like $2
or $2. Yeah.
Yeah. But one of my earliest memories that really got me excited about cards and actually set the stage for me being a degenerate gambler probably in the future was my first future bet that I ever made back in the early 90s. It wasn't truly a future bet, but what it was is Stadium Club used to offer these super team cards. And if you bought a super team card and that team won the championship, you got to basically redeem it for this entire set. And I think it was like the 94 season. I bought the super team card of the Rockets. I remember I was in the mall with my mom. We were in Florida and I like really wanted it. It was like mid-season, made a bet. I think it was probably like $120 and they ended up winning the championship and I redeemed it, got the full set and everything. So that was the first future bet I ever placed. So it's like, you know, early stage degeneracy coming out when, you know, you're like a 10-year-old kid. But look, I mean, that's what makes us all great, right? It's like, you know, having rooting interest when, you know, you buy a collectible and you're rooting for a guy or you're rooting for a team and you build a PC, and it's like building fandom outside of, you know, actually having a, you know, direct fan of a particular team. So
100%. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, pivot to sort of today, you know, and I know that you have a very unique PC. Can you tell us a little bit about how your collections evolved and what you focus on now?
Yeah, look, I'm fairly opportunistic. I got back into the hobby like early days COVID, you know, like everyone else. I dusted off my old collection, sent a bunch of cards to PSA, wasted thousands of dollars because they all came back 5s and 6s because I had no idea what I was doing. And then I went online and I was just buying a bunch of raws and sending them to PSA, and I lost even more money because I didn't know that the raws on eBay were cards that were probably already graded and, you know, cracked out of slabs and resold. So I think like a lot of people, I learned the hard way. So what I developed over time is like, you know, post-COVID, there were certain guys that I wanted to prospect. And one guy I loved, he was a New York guy. He had an amazing college performance at Kentucky. And he's just like one of those guys who jumped out of the gym, ended up winning the dunk contest, was Hamidou Diallo. You know, he was drafted by the Thunder, he cracked the starting roster. And like every time he started, he would put up like, you know, 25 points and he was just slashing. It was so exciting. Then he got traded to Detroit, which was an absolute wasteland. And he kind of got pushed aside there, played for the Wizards in the G League, and now he's playing in China, which is not fun because I probably own his top collection. You know, I have like maybe 5 to 10 of his like 1-on-1s and like high quality ones, like optic autos. And I have all of his prisms, like 99 and down. I have his like of 8s and I have all of his biggest cards ever. So Hamidou, if you're out there and you're interested in having, you know, your largest collection, at this point, I probably feel comfortable just handing it over to him.
Well, you never know, man.
He deserves it more than I do.
Like, yeah, we'll see what happens, but that's awesome.
He is still a young guy.
That's what it's all about, though, right? Is like, I mean, obviously, let's set the financial side, you know, behind us, but your passion, right? You're passionate about that guy, like being able to collect them and have that type of collection. Listen, I'm a huge Chicago guy. I'm a Bulls geek. I have a very large Patrick Williams collection. Not necessarily the 1-on-1s and stuff. Patrick Williams. Yeah, exactly.
No,
Thanks,
I know. I remember we were all prospecting that guy hard and he looked great coming coming out of
Yeah.
like his rookie year. But
Yeah. So who knows? I mean, he's finally starting to turn the corner a little bit, but we'll see. But the point is, when you're passionate about it, it's cool to chase it, and then you hope the financial side works out.
you know what? I had the league pass and I would be watching Detroit basketball like randomly. And
Yeah.
and that's what it's all about. It's like, I was literally watching the Pistons every night. I'm like, what am I doing watching the Pistons? Waiting for Hamidou to come off the bench. I'm like, this is insane, but I loved it. Right.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
and that's what made it great, especially during COVID. It's like when players were in the bubble and stuff,
Oh
like
yeah.
guys were going off. You remember like that the rookie class with John Zion and guys like Tyler Hero cards were going nuts and Kyle Guy cards. It was like it was crazy.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. But I tell you what, man, that bubble basketball was maybe some of the best NBA basketball I've seen in a long time. I think it was because those guys, that was all they could do and all they could focus on. Those are some special games, man.
It just shows you when these professionals actually only have one thing to focus on, which is their profession, what it could actually do for them. But
Right.
yeah, I agree with you.
Totally. Cool. Well, let's shift into business a little bit more. You have a really impressive resume. And I know you've been involved in a variety of businesses, and we'll get into some of your hobby specific stuff, but can you just sort of share with the audience a little bit more about your early years of your career?
Yeah, so I'm a New York guy, born and raised here. Started my career on Wall Street because when I came out of college, that was like the thing you wanted to do. It's like I want to cut my teeth on a trading desk in New York City. I was there for probably 13 plus years, but I always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I was always doing things on the side, building businesses with friends and working with a lot of startup founders. What happened was I basically stumbled into this business. Two guys in my fantasy league approached me and they're like, hey, we all love fantasy sports. Let's start a business. And we kind of, ideated and, put our heads together. And before you knew it, we had this business plan. We had raised like $1 million pre-seed round. And we were like kind of off to the races, but I was like, I'm not leaving my day job for this yet. What happened was 6 months later, I'm, out running around New York City, pitching the business, raising capital, sitting across the table from like, NBA executives, guys like sitting in David Stern's office. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I'm in the right place. I'm talking about something that I built that I'm passionate about as opposed to selling financial products to people. I was like, I think I'm doing this right. So we closed a $5 million Series A round. Then I joined the executive team. I left my day job, scaled that business up rather dramatically. In the beginning of COVID, we ended up selling to a public company, which was the for-profit arm of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was this crazy experience. It was a whirlwind, especially in the beginning of COVID. And then that brought me to Canton, not living in Canton, but I spent a lot of time out there and got a lot of exposure to, Hall of Famers and, working kind of in the institutionalized world of football. And, it was an amazing run. But what happened was when I sold my business, I was like, oh man, I got the bug now. So, I was just looking for any opportunity I could find. And what typically happens is like when you gain credibility, like selling a business like that, people start approaching you with really interesting ideas. Right around then is when I got back into the hobby, saw an enormous white space for, content and education across the hobby. And we ended up building Trove. I found Frank, who's kind of the face of Trove that you see doing a lot of the storytelling. He was just a kid at Seton Hall. He was like trying to sell me his newsletters, like, hey man, subscribe to my newsletter for $20. I was like, who are you? He's like, I'm Frank from Seton Hall. I was like, all right, give me a call, kid. And he called me and I was like, give me your best pitch. And I was like, wow, this kid's actually smart. It's like, you want to build a content business together? He's like, sure. 4 years later, we have hundreds of thousands of followers across all our platforms, billions of impressions. We partner up with everyone across the hobby, including a lot of the big guys like the Heritages of the world and eBay, Fanatics, you name it. So it's been a really fun ride. Ended up getting me a lot of exposure to different businesses and executives across the space. So built a lot of relationships, and that's actually how we met. And it's been a fun ride. It's always been like my passion project on the side. I think we do a really good job of storytelling across the space and finding the best stories in sports. So that's what we're passionate about, and that's what we do.
Yeah, I
And
think it's awesome. I mean, Trove has become so huge, and you guys really are sort of pioneers in that storytelling space. So I guess you said you saw sort of that void that needed to be filled, but Talk to me a little bit more about that, like sort of how you identified that, because like I said, there's been other people that have started doing it more and more and that's become popular, but you guys for sure stuck out as sort of like the pioneer there.
Yeah, when I came into the hobby, I told you I made all these mistakes. I was doing all the wrong things. I was grading all the
Yeah.
wrong cards, and I was like, "There's no one to really guide me. There's no one to, educate me on certain things." And by the way, I think we all know there are a lot of bad actors in the space. So it's like if you're listening to the wrong people, if you're taking the wrong advice, you're ending up in the wrong place, losing a lot of money, and having a really poor experience. And I think for us, it's always been important to onboard new people into the space with a good experience. And that's by educating people, that's by uncovering stories. And that's what we even tell our partners. Like, there's an amazing item. It's like, let us tell the story because no one else is, right? You could do your best on Sotheby's and on Heritage and all these platforms to essentially like write up the description, but like a lot of us are aspirational collectors. It's like, even if we can't afford that $1 million item, like I want to know the story behind it because I want to know, like, if I'm prospecting a guy right now, how do I go and hunt out and seek out an item like that? How do I go find it for myself? So I think that was a huge inspiration for us. And I think we do a really good job. Like, I'm really proud of the work that we do at Trove. Frank is just incredible. It's opened so many doors and he has people banging down our doors all the time, looking to work with him, having him produce a lot of like, long form stuff. And, we're helping a lot of other folks out in the space. So it's been really a fun ride with Trove.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious because I do want to get into some of your other businesses, but with Trove, obviously, like you said, you guys have partnered with a lot of these major companies, but that didn't happen right away. So, sort of, can you talk us through a little bit about that process from sort of how you started to build audience and then when that did transition into being able to, pick up sponsorships?
Yeah, I give this tip to all people out there who are trying to create content. One of the things that we did was we showed up every day, and it's the hardest thing to do. But if you make content consistently and show up every day, the algorithm works in your favor. And Frank has just been a machine for the last 3.5 years. He's been making content every single day, whether it's partner content or whether it's just stories that he's finding. And I have people call me up and be like, "Yo, where did Frank find that story?" And sometimes I'm like, I have no idea. Like, Frank is in the depths of the dark web, like coming up with some of these amazing sports stories. And it's just a matter of like consistency and continuity. And, we built a following. And once we built a following, it became an easy sell, right? I'm a salesman, I'm an entrepreneur, I have a lot of relationships, but to go into a lot of these platforms and companies and be like, "Hey, let us tell your story. Let us tell this item story." It's like, a lot of these businesses don't have their own built-in content studios and content creators. So we just become this outsourced content creation studio for a lot of these big companies in the space. And, people learn to trust us. And sometimes it's hard to quantify the ROI, but other times, man, there are people in our DMs being like, "Yo, I'm bidding on this thing. Take the video down." Or they'll be like, "Thank you so much for uncovering the story. I found this item. I ended up going out and buying it and winning it." And we get feedback from a lot of different people, whether it's consigners, whether it's buyers, whether it's the actual auction houses being like, "Man, this thing went way over expectations. We don't know if it was you, but that piece really helped us get exposure."
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, you guys are doing some amazing work over there, and obviously it continues to grow. So, cheers to you, and obviously to Frank too. It's a team effort for sure, but you guys are kicking butt. So, sort of sticking in the hobby in the collectibles space. In 2023, you created Shoebox. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that company?
Yeah, so I didn't actually create Shoebox. So
Okay.
Shoebox is my fifth startup. It's the only startup that I built from the ground up.
Okay.
This was a business that was incubated actually by IAC. It's a public media company. They had been incubating this technology, kind of came and sought me out, wanted me to be CEO to come in to help spin this out, spun the business out, brought in an investor, and we've been scaling and kind of building for the last year and a half. But this company and the technology has been incubated and being built for almost 3 years now. And what's really exciting about this is obviously I get to stay within the hobby and I get to build in an area that I'm passionate about, but I get to build something that's extremely innovative and unique and nothing that exists right now. So Obviously, everyone, is familiar with grading, and PSA is the big brand, and they're kind of the de facto grader that you go to. But I think, in speaking to like kind of the stumbles that I had early on in my journey, is, there are a lot of folks out there who don't know what they have. They don't know what to send in for grading. And as a result, they end up losing a lot of money and wasting a lot of time. What we're building is an innovative technology solution that allows you to automate the process of grading your cards in real time. So what that means is the Shoebox app is going to have an AI grading tool that's built in, and the tool will allow you to snap photos of your card. It automatically detects the damage, and it basically spits out a grade in real time to you. And that grade is, basically built to replicate, the grades within a grading room. We've had 5 professional graders on staff that have kind of been building and scaling our data models. They've been training the models to understand how to detect damage, how to measure severity, and ultimately how to define grades, subgrades, and then final grades. So the tool that we're building is meant to replicate a grading room. It's like having a grading room in your pocket. And I think, what the tool actually does is probably twofold. First, we see this as a pre-grading tool that people are going to be able to use to really understand what they have prior to send their cards for grading. So, to look at a card, to scan the card, and to ultimately uncover the damage that exists on a card. I mean, this technology is so good, it's picking up stuff that I can't even see with the naked eye. And that's when I'm holding the card up to the light and stuff. And like, yeah, I'm no professional. I don't have a loop in hand, and I'm not in a grading room, but the technology is approaching like superhuman levels, and I'm super excited about it. And the fact that we can put this in the palm of people's hands gets me really excited. The second part of this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, no, sorry. And I'll just get this out of it. Then
Yeah.
we could just discuss it. But the second part of this is, I believe that this is going to unlock a completely new dynamic in peer-to-peer marketplaces in the kind of lower to middle market. It's like you're not sending cards for grading that are between, say, $10 and $200, because it's cost of the grade, it's time consuming. And if you get back a PSA 9 in a lot of cases, you're losing money, especially with the cost of grading. So, what I think this is going to do, I think it's going to build trust and transparency on peer-to-peer marketplaces like eBay and other marketplaces. It's going to give people a lot of confidence in buying cards, understanding the quality of it. So it's going to really kind of reduce the bid ask and the margin when you're going out and you're buying cards. And I think also by having more efficient markets, it's going to increase volumes. It's going to reduce customer disputes and things like that. So I think it brings a lot of benefits to the space. And then, ultimately, we're going to look to other verticals, because this computer vision technology we built could detect damage on any surface. So think coins, jewelry, watches, luxury handbags, sneakers. There's so many different verticals that we could disrupt with this technology. So I'll leave it at that.
That's amazing, man. And I want to dive into that a little bit more, but just sort of, you gave us a little bit of a behind the scenes look at this. So I'm going to bring up something that you sent me, if that's okay, to share with the audience.
Cool.
We can sort of see your stuff in action here. So, okay. So why don't you talk us through sort of what we're looking at here using your tech?
Yeah, so this is a great example. So I was in a meeting and I was demoing this for kind of a well-known outfit in the space. And they're like, well, could we see the thing? And I was like, sure. And I was like, I pulled the card out of my bag. I was like, someone give me a paper clip. So I'm sitting there with the paper clip. I'm like marking up this card, flipping the corners, scuffing the edges. So if you go up a little bit, you could actually see the level of detail. So when you snap photos of this card, what's going to happen is in real time, the images get sent to our grading servers, and our servers return this report. And this is kind of a behind the scenes. What the actual consumers are going to see, or the collectors are going to see 4 subgrades and a final grade. But this is kind of how the meat is made, right? This is how the sauce is made behind the scenes. And what this does, and this is the most exciting part, is in real time, it spits back to me these segmented images detecting the damage. So if you look at the blue images on the top, the hat, basically what I did is I scratched up the hat. You can see some white marks on there. It's like, oh, sure, cool. Okay, I was able to pick up those white marks. If you move over a little bit to the right, you could see the raw edge that I kind of scuffed up over there. It's very grainy, but this is all captured from a smartphone, mind you. So an iPhone is able to detect this level of quality and this level of damage. You look on the right side, that flip corner, obviously it's going to pick that up, because that's a big piece of damage. But if you scroll down a little bit, this is where it gets really exciting. So some of the subtle marks that I made on the back, if you could scroll a little further, you're going to see a green box on the back of this card. And you can't even see it on that green upper box. But if you zoom in a little further on that box, what I actually did, and you could see it's almost like a paperclip mark.
Yep.
If you could zoom in right there, I actually scratched it. And you can't even see that to the naked eye just because it blends in with the color and it's not whited at all. But this technology is able to identify that type of scratch in real time. And there's actually another one on the bottom. If you scroll a little further, you'll see there's another green box from another scratch that I made.
Right here. Yeah.
Yeah, you almost have to zoom in on that a little further. And this completely blew me away when we kind of had this eureka moment when we found this, because this is detecting damage at a level that you almost have to be in a grading room and look under a loop for. And people are doing this at home from their smartphone. And this is the thing that gets me really excited. It's like being able to bring something like this to the consumer that they've never had before is just completely groundbreaking. It's going to change the way that we approach grading. It's going to change the way we approach collecting, and it's going to change the way we approach really transacting in this marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, this is really impressive tech. And like you said, the fact that it's like on the fly, palm of your hand, it's mind blowing the level of detail that you can get. And even to experienced collectors, right? You said that you had made some losses in the beginning because you didn't know what you're doing, but there's plenty of experienced collectors that won't see that level of detail, and to be able to get that, is pretty exceptional. So this is all through the app, like you said. Is that both Apple and Android, or where will it be available? Because it's not right now, correct?
Yeah, so right now the Shoebox app is actually available in the App Store. The Shoebox app is just a digital collection app. It doesn't have the AI grading tool built into it, but we're going to be rolling it out in a couple of weeks just to our early beta users. So I would say if you have the opportunity to go download it, get in there now, because you'll be locked into early beta and you get to use the tool most likely for free. We really want to get people in there testing it, using it, and seeing what it's all about. But there's going to be a web app version that's available that we're going to use for Android users, but also for partners. So one of our big kind of path to market and go to market strategies is going to market through partners across the space. We're talking to breakers, we're talking to marketplaces, we're talking to consumer apps. I want this technology to be in the hands of people across the hobby. And sometimes the only place for that to happen is to really find it through platforms that you're already using. So I think it's important. We've been talking to everyone across the space. Everyone knows that this is coming. They're hopeful that, it's going to be what they think it is. And people are super excited and super bullish about it because they know it's going to unlock a lot of new behaviors for their consumer. It's going to help them build adoption. So we're in a position right now where we're looking to license the tech across all these existing platforms.
That's awesome, man. That's really amazing. So talk to me a little bit, because I'm sure there's people out there who are going to ask, okay, you're going to give me subgrades and things like that. And obviously I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire, but like a little bit in terms of the grading scale, like how do you compare to some of these large companies? I know you mentioned PSA, BGS, some of these other ones that people regularly submit to. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, where can the consumer's mindset be as it relates to that?
Yeah. So again, if you're using this as a pre-grading tool, there's no guarantee that the pre-grade that we're going to give you is going to match the grade that you'll get at the, the traditional grading houses. The biggest issue for us, and one of the things we're trying to solve for, is we're trying to build a quantified, objective model that's fair.
Yeah.
We know that, from my experience, from your experience, from the hobbies experience, that you're going to get inconsistent results in a grading room. And part of it is, the human error. Grading rooms are highly subjective. Grading curves are highly subjective. But all we could do is provide what we think to be a transparent and objective result. And you could do with that what you want, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to inform the collector what their next step is going to be. So whether that means, once they grade their card, if they want to send it in for grading, once they grade their card and they want to PC it because it's a higher quality card, or they want to transact on it, or they find out it's not a high grade and they want to go sell it raw. So what we want to do is we want to equip someone with the tools to inform their next decision. And I think a lot of people, whether you're transactional in the space or not, want to have as much information and be as educated as possible before they, determine their next step.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that grading aspect, obviously what you just showed us, like we said, is sort of behind the scenes. And I appreciate you sharing that with, myself and the audience. But Is there going to be like a report or something that when you grade it through Shoebox that you get that type of level of detail, or is it just sort of the subgrades? Like talk to us a little bit about what that final product is that you receive.
Yeah, I think the consumer, like if you're building a consumer app, the consumer just wants one thing. They just want their grade, right?
Yeah.
And, if I could educate people and show people how we get to that grade behind the scenes, I think they'll gain comfort and credibility in understanding that the subgrades and the final grade that they're getting are going to be accurate based on the way that we're actually detecting the damage. So, when we're talking to partners, I'm offering everything as much as a final grade, subgrades, and then also that report that I sent you to be overly transparent to their consumers. If you look at, a competitor like Tag Rating, Tag actually does a really good job because they use AI. I don't know if they fully use AI, but they use AI to help facilitate their grading process. But they provide this fully transparent report, almost similar to what you just saw there, which I think is really kick-ass. I love that they do that. The real question for Tag Rating is, they're competing against the PSAs of the world, because I think, we play in a completely different area. I'm not trying to compete with the PSAs of the world. To send your cards out is a completely different behavior that we're not even trying to tap into. We're trying to tap into those people who maybe before they send their cards out want to understand what they have, or the entire population of collectors that don't send their cards for grading because they don't trust the process, right? Because they're scared of the downside, they're scared of the risk. So, we're catering to a completely separate audience. And that audience is one that wants to get instant grades on the spot.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you on Tag, right? Like that was one of the things that impressed me most is like you have these claims about using AI and computer vision and things like that, but then to actually see that report is impressive, just like what we looked at with your platform. So I do think there's value. Obviously, like you said, the most important things to the consumer is the grades. Like, does this have a chance at a 10 or is it really a 9 or an 8? That's probably first and foremost, but being able to see that would be cool. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. One thing you did mention is, with the app that you're going to roll out this beta, that it might or could be free at first. So I assume there will be a cost associated with this at some point. Do you have any sort of thoughts on, or can share with us, like sort of what that might look like?
Yeah, the cost structure is actually going to be a sliding scale. I think it has to be, because I do want to cater to, the lower market. So it's likely to be $3, and anything under three is likely to be anything under $30 is likely to be 10%. So if you're grading a $10 card, it's going to cost you $1. If you're grading a $5 card, it's going to cost you, 50 cents. So I want to be able to cater to those audiences. And those collector bases, because there are some people out there who I have a stack of 50 Bowman First cards that I want to send for grading. The card itself is maybe only a $2 card, but I need to understand which of them are actually really high quality cards and that I could send to PSA. Because how many of those cards do you think people are going to send to PSA that come back 8s and 9s, and you're in the hole for like $30 and the card's worthless now? So I want to make it cost effective for people. We're probably going to cap our service out at $100, whereas some PSA items, if you're sending in a massive card, it could be anywhere upwards of $10,000. So if you have a massive card and you really just want to understand what you have, and this is like if you're at a card show, if you're doing a big trade, if you're at a trade night, if you're buying a card at a store, like this tool becomes invaluable to people, right? It's like it really kind of unlocks a new discovery and a new data point for them to essentially inform them as to what their next move is. So I'm super excited to get this in the hand of collectors. I know the collectors are going to love it. I love it as a collector. So I'm excited to see people start using it.
No, it's awesome. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I got to ask, because I'm thinking through the lens of our audience here, right? Like the sliding scale thing, that can bother some people, right? And I understand that, certain things are worth more. What I do want to ask you about though is how will you create that value, right? Like you said, if you have a huge card and it costs me $100, it's obviously not a small decision. I'm not questioning the information I'm getting back from you, but how are you going to do that sort of on the fly, or is it up to the consumer to tell you? I'm just curious about where you guys sort of sit with that.
Yeah, no, there's going to be a pricing mechanism that's embedded into the app that's basically identifying the raw price of the card. It's going to be based on the raw price, so it's not like we're going to come after you, after we grade your card at PSA 10 and be like, hey, you owe us $250, because that's a really poor experience. But it's meant to really be a fair model, right? We had played around with the numbers being just a $3 flat fee, but then I'm like, I need to cater to a lower audience, and spending $3 $10 even to get a $20 card grading is not necessarily the best experience. So, and we're going to package all this into a subscription model too. So if you
Okay.
have a lot of cards that you're, transacting on a regular basis, the subscription model will be probably a $10 per month model that will get you a certain amount of grades. And, there will be other ways to get it. You're going to be able to, work with some of our partners. If you have subscription services across other platforms, it will be kind of rolled into some of those. So there are going to be a lot of ways to access it. For me, I want to make it accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And we kind of toyed around with the number. You need to charge enough that shows it's a real service, and charge little enough that like people would not even flinch at actually, paying for it. So
Yeah, totally. No, like I said, I think it's great. I'm blown away by the tech. The stuff that we showed here, some of the conversations you and I have had offline. It's truly amazing. One of the things though that you also had mentioned was about how it could bring some legitimacy and help sort of solidify or standardize, I should say, across these platforms. The things like the eBays, the things like a trade night, things like that. Obviously, you guys as Shoebox will need to build up your reputation. Your partners are going to have faith in the technology because of what it can do. But is there going to be like any semblance of like a certificate or some way that I can tell other collectors, hey, I have my Shoebox grade or my white label grade or whatever that might be, so that it's sort of like they have the confidence too? Like, how will that part work?
yeah, absolutely. There's a digital slab that gets put around the card, and
Okay.
basically your card gets dropped in the frame, and you could take that picture and you could go bring it to other marketplaces and post it on things like IG and Facebook or eBay. So that gives you a little extra piece of added transparency to show people that this card is in fact what it is. The
Yep.
really unique thing about our platform is the buyer on the other side actually has the ability to then scan that card in and confirm that it is in fact that card.
Okay. I was just
Because
going to
that's a
ask
big
you.
question that everyone
Yeah.
asks. It's like, all right, so I have this digital slab, but
Right.
why don't I put,
I can Photoshop anything in there. Yeah.
the crappier version into it? But our technology is built in such a way that it has the ability to verify that, the card that you bought is in fact the card that you received.
That's awesome. And is that, and again, if there's sort of secret sauce, you don't have to say anything, but is that based upon sort of like that computer vision scan of the card to know that it's an exact match, or is there like a serial number, or like just a little bit about how that would work?
Yeah, so we're building an entire registry. There's going to be a serial number attached to cards. I'll give you a little bit of alpha because we're building something that's super unique to the space that
Killer.
doesn't exist right now, but we're basically creating a digital fingerprint for cards, right? So if you think about raw cards in general, it's hard to identify, one raw card from another. But with our technology, we basically build a fingerprint, which is a combination of all of the pieces of damage that's viewed and seen across the card, and it comes together to create this digital identification for the card. And that's going to have really unique properties in the future, because I think about the ability to then take those cards and do things like card registry competitions, do things like, card collection competitions, all sorts of really fun gamified experiences. If you're a kid, if you have a lesser collection and cards that aren't graded, it gives you some added utility for the cards, and it gives you some additional things you could actually do with it. So that stuff is all in the future down on a roadmap.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive, Matt. I think it's really cool that you guys have thought through a lot of these, sort of holes that people could poke in this. And you've got pretty much all your bases covered. So I can't wait to see this in action. So Shoebox is sort of going to be that consumer facing platform that they're able to leverage the tech. However, the underlying tech platform is something that's called CHCK.AI. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and sort of what possibilities that holds?
Yeah, so Shoebox was originally created as our direct-to-consumer app. It's a collection app that was built at the company that incubated this. What we really wanted to do is we wanted to brand the actual technology that we're building, because I think the potential of this is kind of far-ranging outside of just the sports card and traded card world. So CHCK.AI is basically the technology, the computer vision technology and proprietary 3D technology that we've essentially built here. And I look at that as kind of our B2B play, where we're going to be licensing that tech to other platforms, giving people the opportunity to use that technology on marketplaces and in other consumer apps and stuff. And it doesn't need to be branded as Shoebox, because Shoebox is kind of its own entity. So, our goal for CHCK.AI is that's the tech that's going to be licensed into our partner platforms. And that's the tech that's going to have kind of reach and scale beyond just the trading card world and kind of go into these other areas of collectibles.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating to me and really exciting. Not that the collectibles aren't cool, right? But that's just, a small vertical within a much larger space. So, I mean, do you think it's capable to be doing, obviously, comics, or like you said, like shoes, coins, all these other things? Like, is that there yet? Or are you guys still working on that?
So there are a lot of nuances to it. So I think where we really pride ourselves and how we got really good in sports cards is we've built the largest data set of sports cards and known kind of damage and severities of damage, I think, in the
Yep.
world right now. It's millions and millions of, segmented, annotated pieces of damage. And I've tried our technology with something like a Pokemon card, which is a little bit different in design. And we haven't really built a comprehensive data set yet for Pokemon.
Okay.
And the technology works really well for Pokemon, even though we haven't trained it. So
Yeah.
it just shows me that the model is working, and I think the potential it has is kind of like far reaching outside of this world. With that being said, I think it makes sense to start in this world just because there's already a standardized grading system in trading cards. The next vertical will likely go into something like coins, because that already has a standardized grading
Yeah.
system, and we know it works for that kind of surface and that kind of damage. And then beyond that, when you talk about things like comics, like I think comics, we could do a really good job of being able to detect damage on kind of the outer covers of the comic. The problem becomes is it's nuanced when you're grading things like comics or magazines. You have to kind of like flip through the pages.
Yeah.
And I think, that process could be left within a grading room. But when I think about things like big markets too, like luxury handbags and the people who are, trading Birkins and Chanel's and things like that, or I think of watches, and I think of the ability to kind of attach this report when you're transacting in secondary markets, I think is extremely disruptive. And, eBay's whole vision over the last 5 years since COVID has been really around re-commerce, which is recycled commerce. And I think it's been a huge area of emphasis for people going into their closets, finding things that they want to sell, not knowing what they have.
Yeah.
Right. And mismarketing it when you're posting on eBay or posting on Poshmark or any of these other platforms. So I think it adds a layer of trust and transparency. And I think it's going to really enhance marketplace dynamics in many areas in the future.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Well, you and your team have created some really revolutionary tech, and it's going to be cool to see when this starts to roll out to consumer, which sounds like it's fairly soon. I don't want to hold you to anything, but like any sort of ballpark estimate as to when some people will start to get that beta?
Yeah, I mean, first off, the app works right now. The app is a digital collection app, so you could actually go in there and scan your collection, and use it to manage your collection currently. So that's a fun piece. We don't have marketplace built in, so it's not like some of the other apps that exist. But the UI is super cool and it works really well. So when that grading piece comes up, I think it's going to really be a meaningful game changer for people. So I'm excited for that. Hoping to try getting it into the public prior to Christmas, because I just know, during the holidays, people are going to be ripping a lot of wax. And I think it's an awesome opportunity to have something
Yeah.
like that when you're in the comfort of your own home with your family. So I'm really aiming for that. But download the app right now and stay tuned across our socials, and you'll learn more about when our beta rollout's going to happen.
Very cool. Well, and I apologize if I misspoke. I meant specifically to the grading piece, because yes, Shoebox is out there, so go check it out, everybody. So you've talked through, you had financial career, you went in and had a fantasy company that you created and sold and had success. Trove is rocking and rolling. Shoebox is really on its way. Like, with all this success, do you have sort of a secret formula, or what do you attribute that success to?
Man, I think when I left Wall Street, I think part of the reason why I left is because I wanted to do what I was like passionate about. And I'm super passionate about all these areas that I work in. I get to work with good people, it keeps me motivated. I'm not built like most people. I'm like an absolute like animal when it comes to this stuff. I will literally be working on this stuff all day and all night because it's what I do. Like
Yeah.
I need to have 20 things going on at once and live in chaos and in order to be like productive and to be successful. And I wouldn't wish this upon most people because people would think this is absolute chaos, but this is the type of environment that I thrive in. So I'm happy to do it. I love taking on new things. I love working with great people, and I love like solving big issues in big industries. So like this is what I've become passionate about doing.
That's amazing. And I can relate to you a little bit with thriving in chaos, right? It's like if there's not enough going on, your mind sort of gets stagnant. And like you said, consistency, right? Back to consistency, and it's a
Yeah.
grind and you just stick with it, and good things will happen, man. Well, you'd mentioned about solving big problems. So I'm curious, obviously not all this has always gone well. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges that you've faced and how you've overcome them?
I've been fortunate enough to have pretty good success in my career, but even my first business prior to COVID, we lost our funding. Our investor pulled out of our round, and I had to persevere for about 8 months. Some of my other partners had kind of quit on the business at that time, and I really saw it through, got the transaction done, and sold it to the public company. So, people told me I was crazy. It was also leading up to COVID. Markets were melting away. It was a super scary time. My wife thought I was an absolute nut, but I stuck with it. I persevered and ended up getting the transaction done. So, that's just I think that's a tale for everyone. It's like you got to stay with something that you believe in, and you got to, persevere. And I think that's a really big kind of success story and all that. Trove like started super small, and we were knocking on a bunch of people's doors, and people were like, "No, we don't need this." And when we started hitting our stride, it's all of a sudden like people started calling us up, and we had so much inbound that we couldn't even manage it. The industry ebbs and flows a lot, so a lot of our partners who are really good and consistent partners, businesses change, businesses flop, and we've lost a lot of those partners. So we've seen attrition a lot in that space, but maintaining relationships and staying relevant, I think, has been really key. And, we typically get rewarded by people coming through and, asking if we can help them out. So we've developed a lot of really good relationships, haven't burnt bridges, and it's kind of become just like a word of mouth business. Some of my other areas, I launched a Web3 company, an NFT company, super kind of early in that cycle. We had this crazy success very early on. We sold a couple $1 million worth of NFTs, built a community of 100,000 people we had in our Discord when we launched our first collection. That thing was thriving. We were constantly shipping new technologies, shipping new consumer applications to our community. And at the end of the day, the space kind of dried up, and the runway dried up. They removed royalties from a lot of the marketplaces, and we kind of just ran out of money in that space. And I was super proud of what we did. There was no real financial expectation around that what people were going to get as as a result of buying the NFTs. But I think we unlocked a lot of really cool experiences, delivered a lot of really interesting technology. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really a viable business model. And you're seeing a lot of those companies kind of looking at themselves in the mirror now, trying to figure out what their next steps are. So yeah, it ain't always rosy.
That's entrepreneurship, right?
I think going out and raising capital in the environment over the last 2 years has been one of the most challenging capital raising environments I've ever seen. I think when I say that things have changed over the last 2 weeks, there's been such an enormous shift in sentiment for investors, for entrepreneurs, for people who are just like pro capitalism, and it's been like eye opening. And I think that environment's going to change in a really big way. I mean, you're already seeing a lot of risk assets start moving and flying right now, which is really great to see. So I think the environment's going to change. I think next year is going to be an unbelievable year. I think the ending to this year economically has been great already. You're seeing rates come down. So there's a lot of really fun dynamics at play here. So I feel kind of really good about where things are.
That's awesome. So speaking about the future, like what are the goals for Shoebox and CHCK.AI in the next sort of 12, 24 months?
Yeah, we just want to get our tech in market. We want to get people using it. We want to get it in front of collectors, and I'm just super excited to see that adoption happen, because I think we've built something that's really necessary in the space. And I'm not going out there trying to replace PSA. I think this
Yeah.
becomes part of the grading journey, right? It sits on top of the grading journey, and I think it also unlocks a lot for some of the traditional grading companies. I think maybe you won't send 2 of the 3 cards that you're expecting to send, but you might say, what else do I have in my collection that I could send? You may find some other cards that you weren't expecting to send, that lower cost cards that present an ROI opportunity if they're really great condition. So I hope to unlock parts of the market that didn't kind of exist before. So I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I think it's a peace of mind tool, right? It's the quick serve tool when you're at a show trying to transact. I think there's so many things, to your point, that you're not a competition with PSA. You're just an additional layer to help the consumer sort of, figure out what they're getting or what they have. So that's really cool. That's really cool. Matt, this has been an amazing conversation. I want to be respectful of your time. So sort of before we leave, I like to ask all my guests if you have sort of one golden rule or piece of advice that you could give aspiring entrepreneurs and collectors.
I think going back to what I mentioned before, I think if you do what you love, it makes it easy to do. So be passionate about what you're building. And even if it's something that's like not so interesting to you, find ways to build and to work in ways that kind of unlock your passion and help facilitate what you're passionate about. Perseverance is obviously hugely critical. Don't be a dick, right? Your reputation precedes you. It's like you only have one shot at this thing. You mess it up and your reputation's, destroyed forever. So be kind to people and do the right thing, and, good things will happen.
I love it. So I know that I've been throwing up this banner, not everybody is watching this, some are listening. So can you sort of tell people where they can find some of your companies?
Yeah, sure. Trove, I'd say our two biggest platforms are on IG and TikTok. Find your Trove, but we're also on YouTube. We have more long form stuff on there. We're on Facebook. You can find us everywhere for the most part on most socials. Shoebox, we're pretty active on IG is probably our most active platform. At Get Shoebox. Obviously, you could download our app, and we're also active on Twitter and TikTok. So
killer.
You can find us in those places.
That's awesome, man. Well, Matt, this has been an amazing conversation. You have an incredible story, and I appreciate you taking time to speak with me and share it with the audience. You and your team have done some just amazing work, from the storytelling stuff with Trove to what you're building is some revolutionary tech that I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with that for the collectibles space. So I hope the audience will go. I'm sure a lot of them are familiar with Trove, but at least go check out Shoebox, because that might be new to them. Like Matt said, download it, get in there for collection stuff, and then keep an eye out for the beta on the grading stuff. But I just want to wish you the best of luck, man. And again, I appreciate you taking the time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Same to you.
Awesome.
Great
Thanks,
chatting.
Matt. We'll talk soon. Everyone out there, thank you for watching. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope that you learned something new or found some inspiration. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and of course, please share with your friends. And remember, keep collecting, keep hustling, and we'll see you next week on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide. Thanks for watching and listening.
Hobby Hustle is brought to you by Collector Creative. If you're a collectible brand or company looking for help with marketing, branding, design, or development, head over to CollectorCreative.com and drop Zach a line. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Collector_Creative. And be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide.